What's up, EFD squad? Today we're looking at 10 players who have fallen out majorly with the most divisive manager in world football. Of course, it's Jose Mourinho. Let's do this. 10. Luke Shaw. In September 2015, everything was coming up Luke Shaw. Man United manager Louis van Gaal had declared to the press that it was the season of Luke Shaw, and the young English left-back was starting to really impress at Old Trafford. But his luck was about to run out. He suffered a broken leg later that month, and by the time he was back to full fitness, his mentor had been replaced by Jose Mourinho, who almost immediately made an example of him. After a woeful 3-1 loss to Watford in the league, the Portuguese manager publicly singled out Shaw for his mistakes, despite the youngster playing the match with a groin injury. A player who has always had problems with his weight and fitness, public criticism is likely not the best way to motivate the fullback. But despite signs of improvement in matches, Mourinho continued to berate Shaw in the media throughout the season, questioning his focus and ambition. Unsurprisingly, the results have not been positive. At the time of recording, Shaw has made just 2 League Cup appearances in 2017-18, and his relationship with Mourinho is looking increasingly untenable. 9. Ricardo Quaresma. But it's not just Luke Shaw who has been repeatedly shunned by Mourinho. While at Inter Milan, the former Porto coach brought Ricardo Quaresma in from his old club on special request. Great things were expected. But despite a bright start from the former Barcelona flop, Quaresma was gradually ushered out of the Inter side by the manager, and after just 13 league appearances in his first season at the San Siro, picked up the Bidone d'Oro award for Serie A's worst player. Ouch. In fact, the winger's confidence was so shot in Milan that he later said he would wake up crying before attending training sessions. He later said that his move to the Nerazzurri was his biggest ever regret. Such was the perceived lack of sympathy from Mourinho, but luckily his career did eventually pick up back at Porto and in Turkey with Besiktas. 8. Eden Hazard. Chelsea talisman Eden Hazard actually has a lot to thank Jose Mourinho for. The Portuguese coach returned to Chelsea in 2013, a year on from the Belgians' arrival at Stamford Bridge. And he helped turn a highly talented forward into the world-class proposition he is today, coaching Hazard to win back possession more effectively and work harder for the team. But just months after lifting a first Premier League crown, winning the PFA Player of the Year award, and being compared to Cristiano Ronaldo by his manager, Hazard's relationship with Mourinho began to fall apart. In the first match of the following season, Hazard went down injured in the closing moments, and Chelsea physio Iker Casillas went over to treat him against Mourinho's orders, and the fiasco that ensued helped to destabilise the Portuguese's second tenure in West London. Rumours spread of an affair between Hazard and Casillas. The Belgian was eventually dropped by Mourinho, and he was further targeted by Chelsea fans as one of the rats plotting the manager's downfall. After the coach was sacked, the pair exchanged kind words, but it couldn't repair the damage that had already been done. 7. Kevin De Bruyne. Not one to hold grudges, we expect Kevin De Bruyne looks back on his time under Mourinho at Chelsea in a philosophical manner. Nevertheless, the Portuguese coach didn't half mess the Belgian maestro around at Stamford Bridge. After an impressive loan spell at Werder Bremen, De Bruyne was offered a 5-year contract by Jurgen Klopp at Dortmund to replace the outgoing Mario Götze and become the main man at the Westfalenstadion. But the incoming Mourinho convinced him to stay in London and promised him first-team football in return. Well, it didn't quite work out like that. Despite putting in a man-of-the-match performance on his debut, De Bruyne's playing time was slashed by the £30 million arrival of Willian. Mourinho subsequently handed the Belgian just 130 minutes of Premier League action, and when questioned by the press, reasoned the player wasn't doing enough in training. De Bruyne disagreed and has since said he requested public training sessions to prove his manager wrong. By January, he'd got himself a permanent move to Wolfsburg, and within 18 months he'd found a way back to England, penning a record move to Man City just as Mourinho's Chelsea empire was beginning to crumble. 6. William Gallas. Some of you will probably remember French centre-back William Gallas most for his days at Arsenal, where not only was he captain for a time, but also somehow managed to inherit the number 10 shirts from Dennis Bergkamp. To get to that position, he had to cross Mourinho first. Gallas doesn't hate the special one, far from it in fact, citing his former boss at Chelsea as the best coach he's ever worked with. But unlike the vast majority of footballers to have worked under the Portuguese tactician, the intrepid Frenchman wasn't afraid to completely undermine him. Despite being given a key role in both of Chelsea's title-winning campaigns in the mid-2000s, Gallas was desperate for a new challenge, or a better contract, we'll probably never know. Either way, the defender was so desperate to leave the club that he failed to show for their pre-season tour, refused to play in the league, and, according to Chelsea, told Mourinho that he would score own goals and make deliberate mistakes if he was put on the field. He eventually got his way, moving to Arsenal as part of a deal for Ashley Cole. 5. Pedro Leon. Unlike Gallas, Pedro Leon was seriously undermined by Jose Mourinho during his time at Real Madrid. Brought in from local Minos Getafe in 2010, the Spanish winger was tasked with fighting the likes of Mesut Ozil and Angel Di Maria for a starting place, which in itself was a tough challenge. But Leon also had to contend with the hostility of his manager, who from the get-go was eager to play down his new signing. When asked by the Madrid media why he wasn't starting the forward early in the season, Mourinho replied, "You speak about him as if he were Zidane, Maradona or Di Stefano. He was playing for Getafe just 2 days ago." And things only got worse as the season went on. According to former Madrid keeper Jerzy Dudek, Leon would be singled out in training for his lack of effort, while one report suggested the manager told him that even if the team plane crashed without him on it and he was the only man left available, he would still not play the following week. Brutal. And before going back to his previous club that summer, Leon allegedly called Mourinho out for workplace bullying. 4. David Luiz. One man who certainly never saw eye to eye with Jose Mourinho was David Luiz. After returning to the club in 2016, the Brazilian defender has become almost as synonymous with Chelsea as the Portuguese coach himself. But his exit from Stamford Bridge 2 years earlier was 100% down to his manager. Luiz's somewhat adventurous style of play did not sit well with Mourinho's more conservative defensive philosophy, and he was limited to just 19 league appearances in his final season. A year on, Sideshow Bob criticised his former coach ahead of PSG's showdown with Chelsea in the Champions League last 16, claiming he was not special. And things came to a head in the game itself. Luiz scored the equaliser in Les Parisiens' victory, and he celebrated like mad, signifying a victory of the optimist over the pessimist. 3. Iker Casillas. But Mourinho has arguably treated no one quite as poorly as Iker Casillas. The Real Madrid legend's exit from the Bernabeu is one of the great footballing tragedies of recent times, and it was the former Merengue's manager's actions which set it in motion. Casillas and Mourinho were rarely on the same page during the Portuguese's time in the Spanish capital, with Los Blancos' captain uneasy with the manager's assertion that they could not match Barcelona by pure footballing means, and the coach unsure of the keeper's physical abilities in the box. But their relationship really became strained in 2011, when, ahead of Real's clash with Barca in the Champions League, Mourinho's team was leaked to the press early. The manager supposedly suspected Casillas' journalist's girlfriend, Sara Carbonero. And after a particularly bad-tempered El Clasico months later, in which Mourinho poked Tito Villanova in the eye, Casillas called Xavi to help calm the waters between the two sets of players. Mourinho saw this as a breach of the captain's responsibilities and a show of weakness to their arch-rivals. He began to shun him for Diego Lopez as the club's number one, and was later said to have seen Casillas as a grass, a mole, and a traitor. Ouch. 2 and 1, Sergio Ramos and Pepe. But it wasn't just Casillas who had a run-in with Jose Mourinho in Madrid, and it's no secret the manager wasn't the most popular figure at the Bernabeu. Before the coach rejoined Chelsea in the summer of 2013, Sergio Ramos had accompanied Casillas to a meeting with Florentino Perez, telling the Real president that if Mourinho did not leave, then the pair of them would. And it wasn't without reason. Ramos had been publicly criticised by Mourinho on a number of occasions, and when the defender questioned the manager's decision to do so, he was dropped for the club's crucial Champions League tie against Man City. And after Mourinho called Ozil a coward in the dressing room and subsequently subbed him at half-time in a clash with Deportivo in 2012, Ramos showed solidarity with his German teammate by wearing his number 10 shirt underneath his own in the second half. And finally, 2 years later, he gave his former coach a backhanded swipe by pretending to forget who he was in an interview. Ramos' defensive partner Pepe, on the other hand, was originally one of Mourinho's pets. His no-nonsense style at the back sat well with the Portuguese coach, and he was actually tipped to join him when he moved to Chelsea. But after Mourinho's public dressing down of Casillas, Pepe jumped to his captain's defence, labelling the manager's actions as not adequate. Mourinho responded by taunting the 30-year-old centre-back for losing his place in the side to a 19-year-old Rafael Varane. As always, a pillar of professionalism. So that was our top 10 players who hate Jose Mourinho, but what did you think? Was there anyone we missed out? Let us know in the comments below. Now, if you enjoyed this, why not head over to FD, where EFD took on FD on the football pitch. I know, pretty crazy stuff. And also yesterday's Stat was the champions between Chris and Pat. An absolute cracker as always. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.